All right, a happy Thursday morning. Greetings from locations unknown right now. It feels like I'm in actually the same room when I did the OG Anunoby trade video breakdown, and I am not, trust me. So, we are bringing back the off-season videos. Probably everyone was wondering where they were. Why didn't they come out on Wednesday night? My apologies, I was traveling. If you're looking for teams that are the top 10 teams in a lottery, we're going to do those closer to the May 12th lottery. But we will start talking about teams that have been eliminated in the play-in. And certainly when you get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, second round, and so on, you will get a video. You can find all the off-season articles on ESPN.com. There are 12 articles up there right now. And we are going to talk a little bit about the Chicago Bulls. Oh, man. I feel like I am like a person who is reviewing restaurants and want to give teams a great grade for how great their meatballs are, but not a great grade for what the spaghetti tastes like. And some of these teams, I guess it's the optics, how you view things. Certainly, if you're a Bulls fan and a Sacramento Kings fan, and we're going to do a Kings video in a little bit. How the season ended is not what you wanted as far as getting your doors blown off. And I think in Chicago, 39-43, you kind of find there's two ways to look at this. You kind of find yourself in a familiar pattern where you've been in prior years. I have my phone here and I'm just looking at my notes and stuff like that. They won 40, 39, 30, 40, 36 games the last three seasons. They failed to make it out of the play-in for a third straight season, below 500. But there is a sense, yes, I'm trying to paint a happy face to all this. There is a sense that there's light at the end of the tunnel just based on what they were able to do since the trade deadline, what they were able to do in March, 17-10 after the All-Star break, 15-5 after March 6th, that there is a foundation starting to come together. I say that then, and then you go out and you play Miami and you get your doors blown off and your season is over and like we're basically kind of back to square one. So I think there's two ways to look at it. If you want to look at it the pessimistic view, like, oh my God, here we are again. Where is this team going? And then there's the second one where, hey, we control our draft picks over the next 7 years. We don't have that Zach LaVine contract hanging over our head anymore. We have $70 million in expiring contracts going into the summer. We have a young and up-and-coming player in Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis. So there is the makings of things to kind of start building this roster around here. So I give them credit for that, right? We picked them apart almost 2 years ago, and we said kind of pick a direction. They picked a direction. They traded LaVine. Probably they didn't see a 15-5 stretch run to finish the season here, but here we are. Okay, so where they're picking, we're still going to be in that TBD. It's going to be anywhere from, I have these, look at these things. These are the draft pick scenarios going into Friday. It's going to be anywhere from 12 or 13. There's a chance if Miami and Dallas wins, it could potentially be 11. So they are going to have a lottery pick. They'll have a chance to jump in there. It's a long shot to jump in the top three, of course. They have a second round pick. That's from Sacramento. All ties for the lottery will be broken. I believe that's going to be Saturday morning after the play-in games are over here. So that's kind of a little bit of what's coming down the pike. In June, you will have a lottery pick to add to this group. Your free agents. Trey Jones, who is hurt in the play-in. Josh Giddey, we're going to talk about him in a minute. Javon Carter, he's got a player option. He's going to opt in, I would say. Talon Horton, Tucker, Emmanuel Miller, and E.J. Liddell. Those are your two-way guys here. We kind of gave a little bit of a state of the roster. You know, Arturas Karnisovas, their GM, gave a statement back in, I think it was around the trade deadline back, like about how to build rosters. There's different variables. And I know there's the variable, and maybe it was a little bit of fool's gold down the stretch, that you can have 10 or 11 good players. At the end of the day, man, stars win in this league. You got to have one or two stars on this roster, and Tyler Hero is a star. You didn't have that on your roster. Bam Adebayo is an all-star, all-NBA player. You don't have that on your roster. So there is separation, even though Chicago was a 9 seed and Miami was a 10 seed here. You have control over your first-round pick. I looked up this note. It's the first time you have control over your first-round pick since 2021. That is amazing. So you have that flexibility where you're not looking over your shoulders at San Antonio, basically saying, "Are we sending it to the Spurs? It's top 11 protected. Would it go?" You have control over your own first. We've been adding some graphics. We've got the depth chart, and then we have an off-season focus. The big thing to know about Chicago this offseason, they've got $140 million in salary. You would think they would be under the cap because the cap's 154. They're not because of the free agent cap hold of Josh Giddey. If you go on Sports Business Classroom, we have a whole thing about, and it's free, about cap holds and how they work, and it's how it impacts the cap. Giddey's a restricted free agent. He'll get a qualifying offer, but there's a hold of his free agent hold that counts against the cap until he is signed with Chicago or he is another team. But you do have the flexibility to re-sign Giddey, to stay under luxury tax, and you also use your non-tax mid-level, which is at 14-1, and acquire a player in a trade or use in free agency. Your roster spots are limited, and you do have 2 trade exceptions at 17.2 and 2.9. So your finances, you're in good shape, right? Like you're sitting, and you're not a cap space team, but that's coming. 2026 offseason is coming where you're going to have a lot of flexibility, and I think that's kind of knowing who you are. What are you? Are you a team that's willing to parlay your Vucevic, Herter, Zach Collins contracts into more draft picks, like some of these other teams are doing? I think that's the goal here, as far as you're still in that in-between stage where you're not 1 or 2 steps away from competing with the top 6 or top 5 there. So who are you as far as taking contracts, or do you want to go into the cap space game in 2026? That is not probably a way I want to go. But build up your draft equity and parlay those players into build more draft equity. That's the end goal. I'm sorry, I'm getting text here and everything. So you got to make a decision as far as what the value is, as I said, as far as cap space versus expiring contracts and adding more draft picks. Giddey, the free agency talks with Josh Giddey are going to be interesting. I put a note in the offseason article, and my editor came back and he goes, "Are you sure with this note?" And I'm like, "I am. I did the math. The average point guard salary next year is $38 million." And you're like, "Whoa!" And you're looking at Emmanuel Quickley's on the bottom at 32.5. What is the Giddey number? And he had a heck of a year, and he played through some injuries. I'm not going to go through all the analytics and the stats and everything like that, but he proved his worth on the court. They tabled extension talks in October. I think the Giddey numbers I think it's $30 million. I think if it's like 5 for 150 but average quality starting point guards, young starting point guards, and you could say who else has cap space and let them play the restricted free agent market. You don't want to go down that road. You got to, the Mavericks were killed when Kyrie got signed, and they said, "Oh, who are you competing against?" And now you're looking at it like, man, $41 million is a good contract. So you got to figure out the Giddey part here. I do think his number is in that $30 million range, and we'll see how that certainly how that plays. Excuse me, how that plays out here. I think the second priority is, as I said, figuring out what you do with those expirings. You want to parlay them into. Vooch is going to be interesting. He's extension eligible also. 8 of their 12 players under contract are on expiring deals. That's kind of what you need to know. Extension candidates to look for, Kobe White. and certainly did not play his best in the play-in, but he is extension eligible. The problem with Kobe White is the max he can get is 4 for $89. Maybe you think Kobe White's an $18 million player. I don't think he does. He's coming off, he's on a $12.8 million salary. The lower you are, the less, when you outplay your contract, it becomes extremely challenging as far as what that extension number is going to be. It's similar in Memphis with Jaren Jackson Jr., and I'm sure we'll do a video down the road on the Grizzlies here. But Kobe White is extension eligible. Team needs defense, 23rd in efficiency, last in points in the paint, and as I said, we talked about their draft equity. They still have that Portland pick. Who knows? Maybe that gets conveyed next year. It's top 14 protected, and you do have 6 second-round picks. So that is a skinny. I hope this video tapes because I'm doing this on photo because Zoom has been a pain in my rear end. That is the skinny on Chicago. Is the sky falling? No. Does it feel like you're here? You were here a year ago and it's deja vu? Yes. But I do think there is some foundational pieces to build around. But I do still think that the front office does need to pick a direction with those expiring contracts because, as I said, if you view yourself as a top 16, then go for it. I don't think they are. I think last night showed it, and they've got some decisions to make, certainly starting with the draft. We will talk soon. NBA